Thank you very much. Okay, we have a few proclamations. The city is going to recognize Code Enforcement Appreciation Week. We have a code enforcement officer, but couldn't be here tonight. He was in training this week. And anyway, one of our proclamations for this evening, Code Enforcement Appreciation Week. Whereas the second week of October is designated as Code Enforcement Appreciation Week throughout the state of California.
Recording in progress.
To recognize and celebrate the positive role code enforcement has in its communities. And whereas code enforcement provides for the safety, health, and welfare of residents and businesses through the enforcement of local, state, and federal laws and ordinances dealing with various issues of building, zoning, and housing. And whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, highly qualified, and highly trained professionals who share the goals of preventing neighborhood deterioration, enhancing communities, and ensuring safety preservation through the education and knowledge of housing, zoning, and nuisance laws. And whereas code enforcement officers often have a high visibility role in the communities they serve and regularly intact with the public and a variety of federal, state, county, and local officials. And whereas the City of Solvang recognizes and honors its code enforcement officer who continues to serve the community in a variety of ways to improve the quality of life for residents and businesses. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor David Brown, along with the City Council of the City of Solvang, does hereby proclaim the second week of October 2025 as Code Enforcement Officer Week and call upon its residents to join in recognizing and expressing their appreciation for the dedication and service of Code Compliance Officer Jennifer Cabrillo and fellow staff members that support code compliance in our community. In witnesses thereof, I have undue set my hand and have caused the official seal of the City of Solvang of California to be affixed to this 27th day of October 2025. And to accept this on Jennifer's behalf, I think, is Wendy or Raphael, her supervisor.
Actually, she has something and typed it out. Go ahead and read that out.
And I see Jennifer everywhere. I'd rather that too.
But I will share what she wrote. So she would like to express her sincere gratitude for the Code Enforcement Proclamation for the recognition of the work they do in this field. It's truly an honor to serve the City of Solvang's Code Enforcement Officer. She wished she could be here in person to accept this recognition, but she's currently attending the 2025 California Code Enforcement Conference, continuing to learn, grow, and bring back knowledge that will benefit our community. As the city's sole officer, she takes great pride in representing Solvang and in supporting our allied city departments. Her goal each and every day is to promote a positive image of our city by fostering a culture that is helpful, approachable, knowledgeable, and guided by the highest standards of integrity. She again wishes to thank you for this meaningful recognition and for your continued support of code enforcement and our shared mission to keep Solvang a safe and beautiful and welcoming place for all.
Well, thank you, and thank you. Send our appreciation to Jennifer, please. Okay, second, I have another proclamation on behalf of the support of Diablo Canyon Power Plant License Extension and Coastal Commission Approval Proclamation. Whereas Diablo Canyon Power Plant, DCPP, is California's last operating nuclear facility and state's largest source of clean carbon-free electricity, generating about 10% of California's total power and providing safe, reliable service to approximately 4 million residents. And whereas California aims to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045 and continued operation of DCPP is essential to meeting that goal while maintaining statewide energy reliability and premature closing would require fossil fuel generation or major renewable and storage products, potentially rising cost and emissions during the transition. And whereas DCPP provides significant economic benefits to San Luis Obispo County and Santa Barbara County, including hundreds of skilled jobs, substantial tax revenue, and strong local business support, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is reviewing Diablo Canyon Power Plant license renewal application pending the Coastal Commission final coastal compliance determination. And whereas the California Coastal Commission will take up DCPP-related matters on November 6, 2025 in Sacramento, and the City of Solvang affirms the importance of clean, reliable energy to California's economy, environment, and quality of life, supporting DCPP's continued operation as part of a sustainable energy future. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor David Brown, along with the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, do hereby proclaim our strong support for the license extension of Diablo Canyon Power Plant and urge California Coastal Commission to approve all necessary permits to ensure its continued operation as a viable source of clean, reliable, and carbon-free electricity for California. In witness thereof, I have unto set my hand and have caused the official seal of the City of Solvang, California, to be affixed this 27th day of October 2025. And to receive this is Mr. Eric Daniels, PG&E representative of Diablo Canyon Power Plant. Thank you, Mr. Daniels. If you have a couple words, you're welcome to say.
I didn't bring anything prepared. Eric Daniels with PG&E. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I will take this back to corporate and look forward to also having it shared on November 6th as well at the committee, so at the commission meeting. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, that is the extent of our proclamations. We have a presentation this evening from Jose regarding the utility rate structure update.
We're having technical difficulties, so apparently this is not going to show on the screen for purposes of council. This presentation is part of your packet.
So this presentation has a bunch of charts and data that would be beneficial to see on a screen. So I'm not sure that we want to proceed with the.
Do you wish to postpone your presentation?
I would, because the data and the charts are worth seeing and will explain the presentation better.
Postpone it for another meeting.
Well, the information is available on our as part of our agenda packet. Given that we don't have a very large online audience or online, I mean, it's up to council.
If you present the slides, Jose, can the YouTube viewer see the material?
No.
Okay.
It's in the agenda packet, though.
Right.
So, I mean, he could just say like slide number, and they could follow along, I guess.
Do you have the slides in front of you for presentation? Okay, because we all have the slides here, so
Okay.
I'm inclined to go forward with it.
I'm fine going with it as well. It's just
Okay.
so if you guys have the slides available to you.
I think he just wants to go home and wants the Dodgers lose.
Well, there's all,
I was just checking, making sure Wendy is here for HR purposes. But.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
not going to reveal the score.
Yeah, nobody say the score.
Okay,
well,
we can go ahead.
if you go ahead and proceed, that'd be great, and we'll follow along with our own we have these slides in front of us, so.
Okay, as this is a presentation, I don't know that if it's loud, you guys are more than welcome to ask questions throughout the slideshow, so that way I can try to answer them as we're moving along. So there are going to be 7 bullet points that we'll be hitting this evening. I'm going to provide analysis of the rate performance since HCR 22 study was implemented and adopted. We'll compare actual and forecasted revenues and reserves, confirm adequacy of rate trajectory for water and wastewater utilities. We'll evaluate the consumer class impact and reserve compliance. The wastewater treatment plant upgrades, I'll be giving an update on that this evening as well, and some considerations that staff have been discussing. We'll discuss the utility rate comparison with surrounding communities. This data is for informational purposes, as the surrounding communities may not have necessarily adopted a long-term rate implementation, but the rate studies have been completed. And the last thing that we will present are rate implementation considerations and some rate scenarios that can be considered or discussed. Go on to the next slide. This slide is the water utility revenue data slide. Sorry, this is hard for me to. Let me put this over here. Oh, that's true. So on this slide, you can see what we're showing on the slide is the proposed rate increases for the 5-year plan that was adopted in 2022. We also have the HDR proposed projected revenues for those 5 years as well. And we have total revenue actual. As you can see, 25-26 is projected. It hasn't been audited yet, but that information has been completed by staff. 26-27 is projected revenue actual. The total expenditures actual are here as well, and the difference in projected versus actual revenues are on the far right of this diagram. Yes, you can. And one thing I want to point out is expenditures include CIP planned for this year, but may get carried over. So as you can see, the expenditures vary slightly year over year, but as we get to 25-26, it shows expenditures of $11.7 million. That is because of CIP projects that have been carried over. Those funds get carried over as expenditures as well. And we're hoping to complete a lot of those CIP projects this year or this fiscal year. But if they don't, that will just decrease this figure and increase next year's figure. I will be discussing CIP projects in a little more detail later on in the slideshow as well.
Thank you. That was the question I had, was why this was that amount. Thanks.
The next slide, you could see the chart that shows where projected land versus actual revenues. As you could see, there are some gaps here in this in projected versus actual. The gaps are, you can see some years we actually had more revenues than what was projected, but at the end of this chart, you could see that that gap closes quite right on point of where we were projected to be. Some of the points I want to make about this slide is the rate study projected revenues to increase 5.5% year over year. Those were the increases to the rates. Actual revenues have increased slightly higher year over year, and as I mentioned at the last year of this chart, which is next fiscal year 26-27 projected, it's right on point with what was projected through this 5 years. A steady 5.5 rate adjustments were sufficient to match expenditures during this time frame, and this supports a financial stability without excessive reserve growth, which I'll discuss a little more further in the slideshows as well, where we are with our reserves as well. Any questions so far?
That
Yes.
gap, is that because of water usage or total volume of water used? Is that why there's a gap there for 24, 25?
No, again, so this is in line with the previous data, is that there were some CIP projects that didn't get completed during that fiscal year. So the actual revenue was higher than what the projected was because that money was sitting there as revenue.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on to the wastewater utility revenue data. Same information is here, but just reflecting the wastewater revenue projected versus actual data. The one point of difference here is the projected rate increases through the rate study. As you can see in year one, the rate increase was 37.5% for sewer bills. The next 3 years were 17.5%, and in 26, 27, we're projected to implement a 15.5% increase in the sewer bill. The projected revenue is in line with total revenues through these years as well, because we didn't realize some of the CIP projects. As you can see, total expenditures, there's another substantial increase in fiscal year 25, 26 as we start incurring more charges for the wastewater treatment project, or anticipate incurring more charges this year for the wastewater treatment project prior to the end of this fiscal year.
Two questions there, Jose. Can you just comment? Because I think what we're showing is that we've collected more revenue than we've expended, expenditures on maintenance and projects. But it's interesting that both water and wastewater have the same delay, right? We are still, what's your commentary on our ability to execute and up until 25, 26?
I would say that there was a transfer. I came in when this rate study was being finalized, and we got it pushed through to be for approval. So all the CIP projects that were being presented by the previous utility director, I was coming in fresh, trying to start those. As you're aware, I took a stint away from the city for 15 months. During that 15 months, Randy and staff did everything they did to keep utilities afloat, but there were no major projects moving forward at a rapid pace. They were progressing, but at a very slow pace. As for wastewater, the USDA loan process has drug out quite a bit, and we're been discussing other options that we may be coming to council for later as well. I will be discussing the wastewater treatment project a little more in depth as well on one of these slides to give a little more detail of where we are with planning, with funding, and considerations that staff has presented to Carollo, the engineer working on the project.
Do we anticipate, so on wastewater standalone, the percentage increases are double digit, not the 5% that was kind of communicated when we absorbed the initial rate increase study. So do we expect a further need for increase just on wastewater rates beyond 2027?
I think we may be at a financial point where, because this rate study included debt service. So it included the loan for, I want to say at that time was $18 million. So it included debt service repayment within these rates. So if the price tag for the wastewater treatment project comes in higher, or there are other unanticipated CIP projects that must be completed, we could see a need for increases as well at wastewater. But this rate study with this 5-year built in, the 37.5, the 17.5, and the 15.5 increases was inclusive of debt service repayment. And you mentioned the 5% or 5.5% increases. That was strictly for the water side of the utility increases. I will say we will probably be looking for increases in the water side with those 5.5%. Those were just steady increases to keep the operations and maintenance going, keep up with expenditures, and try to get some of our CIP projects off the line. I'll mention how we've continuously review our CIP project schedule and how we have to defer some of the projects based off of where we are today. I'll go in that in depth a little more on a future slide as well.
Yeah, further, to expand upon that, you're saying that the revenues include the debt service, but your expenses do not, correct?
Future expenditures will include the debt service.
No,
The revenue,
the actual though, so for example, 24, 25, we had revenues of 3.275 million actual, and your total expenditures were 3.21. Those expenditures did not include debt, correct?
that is correct.
Because there wasn't any.
There is no debt.
But your revenues included it. Or you're including it in revenues, but we don't have any debt here. So where's that gap? It should be expanding for growth. because you don't have debt service, but you're collecting for it, from what you told me.
So if I can go to the next slide,
Okay.
I could show you where
I'm ahead of
that
the curve. Okay.
gap is. As you could see, projected revenue, there was a gap there versus actual. We assumed in 25, 26 that we would start paying back that debt, or assume a loan at that point, which would start assuming debt repayment. These numbers at the end of 25, 26 will change based off of where we are with that debt. So right now, we're projecting that that's what the expenditures are. Those aren't actual expenditures. I'll go back a slide just so I can confirm that. As you can see, total expenditures are 8 million in 25, 26 expected to be, are projected. So there is some money sitting there waiting to pay back that debt once we assume that debt.
So we're assuming we're going to start the project next, or in 26.
That's my anticipated
Current
goal.
fiscal year.
Yes.
Are we,
Or to be out to bid with the loan secured before the end of this fiscal year.
The thing to keep in mind is monies that aren't spent go into the fund balance. So, to the extent we've anticipated already incurring that debt service, and we haven't, it's allowing us to build up our fund balance, which will be helpful in securing a loan from USDA, because that's one of their concerns, is we don't have adequate funding right now.
so can I further expand on that? So we need to show some level of reserves as our contribution to debt service, to being, kind of considered for debt. And this is helping us build that case where we were nearly at no indication of that prior to 2022. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. Wendy, Scott, did you want to chime in?
You want to step up to the podium, Wendy?
So one thing, back in, before they did the rate study, the wastewater reserve fund was in a negative balance. And with the rates, they projected the rates to have a surplus and build up that reserve. And even though the reserve is continuing to grow, we're actually paying more expenses because the project has been delayed because the PER isn't finalized and the plans aren't finalized, and we don't have that funding. So, yes, the reserve balance is projected, and the loan, the debt repayment, annual payment is was projected into the rates, but even though we don't have the loan yet and the debt, we still have the expenses of the ongoing expenses to the contractor for the PER. So it's kind of like a balance.
So if I could just
Maybe
elaborate.
But would also help the mayor understand where all that money is, if you just showed the reserves. I think you have a slide to show that to us later. So there is a tracker of how much we're ahead.
Yes, we do keep track. And like Randy said, we do need to have a substantial balance in order to qualify for the loan.
And keep in mind that we are still continuously paying these contractors for the work that they're doing on this project thus far. But part of the loan agreement, or one of the resolutions that we signed, is that we can pay ourselves back for that debt and roll it into the loan, if that makes sense. So because we're paying that right now up front, we can pay ourselves back with the loan for that debt that we incurred. Go to the next slide. I hope you're on the same slide as me. It's water unrestricted fund reserves balances. That's where we're at. So as you can see here, what we're showing is revenues through these fiscal years, expenditures, and then also on this one is a slide showing capital expenses throughout those fiscal years and the net change. And on the far right, you could see the reserve unrestricted fund balances at the end of those fiscal years as well. So when we started the rate study, our reserves for the, because we use the term unrestricted fund balance versus reserve, but they mean the same thing. So I'll use the word reserve just so that way we're on the same page. So when we started the rate study, we were at a surplus of 6.8 in our reserves. Throughout this 5-year study, as you could see, capital expenses have been pretty minimal. In 22-23, they were $880,000. That's when we completed one of our major CIP projects, which was Friedensburg Canyon Waterline. So that's why that one's slightly higher. The next few years, we did some minor plans, contracting with some of the consultants for environmental for a couple other projects, Nyborg Estates, the HCA well. So those are a couple of projects that we've incurred debt on throughout these few years. So as you could see, our unrestricted fund balance continued to slightly grow because we weren't necessarily completing or expanding on those CIP projects through those few years. At the end of 24-25, and this is preliminary figures again, which haven't been audited, our reserve balance was at almost $9.6 million. You see a negative net change of $5.394 million by the end of this fiscal year, 25-26. That includes projects such as Nyborg Estates, which was about a $2.2 million project. HCA Middle Well, that's another $2 million project. And we have the AMI project, automated meter reading infrastructure, which is the ability to bring meter reads in automatically to utility billing and allow a customer-facing portal for customers to access their data as well. Any questions on this slide?
How much was the meter read project? Sorry, how much is the meter read?
The AMI project, we budgeted $330,000 into our CIP plan for that. We're currently speaking to several vendors to get their qualifications and get information on their product. We will be interviewing a total of 4 prior to releasing the RFP. I'm hoping to release that RFP by the end of this calendar year or the beginning of next calendar year to start that project. The next slide demonstrates what those figures were showing. You have slight increases to the reserves year over year, and in 25-26, we're anticipating a drastic drop-off based off of the projects I'm hoping to complete before the end of the fiscal year, or at least start them. Yes. Reservoir 3 is the reservoir out on LSL Ranch. Yes. Reservoir 1 is up on top of LSL Road. So, yes. Next slide. Now we're at the wastewater reserve balances. Again, here you can see reserves, expenditures, capital expenses, the net change, and the balance of the reserves at the end of the fiscal years. Here, I think what Ms. Arona was saying is you could see the changes in the unrestricted fund balances. You could see that when we started the process, our restricted fund balance was $3 million, dropped down to 1.1. We had a major project completed right before the last rate study, which was the aeration process at the wastewater treatment plant. They've slightly increased through the years as we haven't realized the debt for the upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant. We've done small projects at the wastewater treatment plant, but nothing major yet. And as you can see, fiscal year 25-26, the budgeted amount for capital expenses is 4.928. As I mentioned earlier, this is anticipating starting the process for the loan for the wastewater treatment plant and starting to pay that back. Again, if this doesn't get realized this fiscal year, we'll roll it over into 26-27 fiscal year. Next slide. Again, here with the wastewater fund, you could see as well the trend line. When we started the rate study, we had a drastic drop off in reserves, but throughout the next few years, we had slight increases in the reserves. And then fiscal year 25-26, we're anticipating a rapid decrease in that reserves. Some future projects for the wastewater treatment plant are obviously the major one, the upgrade project. We have 2 lift stations that we have to do upgrades to. The LSL lift station and the Fjord Drive lift station, those are built into CIP as well. We have manhole and sewer line relining projects for infiltration. We have quite a bit of infiltration, especially out on the golf course during wet years. We get quite a bit of stormwater infiltrating into the sewer lines, which takes a toll on that LSL pump station and also at the wastewater treatment plant. Next slide. This slide demonstrates water consumption and revenues for residential versus total. We didn't put together residential based off a single family, multifamily, and any residential properties and the classifications that we bill. This doesn't, so the difference is commercial, irrigation, and industrial. So those are separate, those are the others versus all residential. As you can see, total consumption is the first column. Second column is the residential consumption compared to total, and the percentages of residential versus total. The next three columns show the revenue, the total revenue versus residential consumption revenue, and the percentage of residential revenue compared to total revenue. What I do want to mention here is you guys each received a blue folder as well. And in the blue folder, there's a further breakdown of the consumption percentages for each class. So this was an afterthought after we put together the slide and we released the agenda, was gathering this information for breaking it down further into different classes. We'll go to the next slide where you actually see the chart showing the trend lines. So fiscal year 21, 22, we see that we were higher than we were fiscal year 22, 23. The way I explain that drop off is we were in a drought year in going into 22, 23. People were conserving still quite a bit. 22, 23, we started getting a couple storms. The projected view is that we have plenty of water because we get these storms. So sometimes the sprinklers turn on instead of 10 minutes a shift, 15 minutes a shift. Instead of 2 days a week, it's 3 days a week. So the misconception is that we have the water because we have those huge storms. People tend to use a little more water or leave the water running a little longer. As you can see, there is a gap that widens here as well between residential and total. We can assume, or we try to assume, that these patterns are due to probably higher tourism in the last couple years as well. We've had quite a bit of increase in tourism locally, so that's why we see the gap between residential and the total usage. And one thing I want to point out is that the residential meters altogether make up approximately 86% of the total meters that are in the system. So they place the heaviest burden on the system, and they are the heavier users in the system as well. Next slide is the residential revenues for residential versus total. As you can see here in this slide, there is they're consistent throughout. The last fiscal year, there is that gap as well, where we again anticipate that commercial and tourism picked up quite a bit during that fiscal year as well. Sorry, I want to keep up with my slides. So next one. This is showing the wastewater revenues, residential versus total. Again, we don't have flow rates to break down how residential is compared to total. So what we did is we assumed the water percentages for wastewater as well. As you can see, total revenue here is in the middle column. Residential revenue is in the second to last column. Again, those percentages are based off of the percentages of water consumption. So for example, 67.3 for fiscal year 21-22, we use the same comparison of how much water was consumed by residents over the total consumption for water. So we use that data to compile these figures. Any questions on that? Yes.
Kind of confused by that, Jose. So say that again, because wastewater is just a flat rate. it's not variable based on consumption, right?
No, wastewater rates do have some variability built into them. For example, they all pay a fixed charge, but volumetric charge, commercial, industrial high, they pay a volumetric fee as well.
Do residents pay?
No,
Okay.
residents pay a flat fee.
I just have never seen one.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why the residential percentage, that does support your commentary. If the residential percentage goes down over time from 67 to 66, or it goes up a minute and then it comes back down, then it does support the idea that businesses are consuming more because tourism has gone up.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what we're assuming.
Okay.
Next slide is the chart demonstrating this data. As you can see, there is a gap as we get to fiscal year 23, 24, and 24, 25 as well, similar to what happened in the water consumption as well. Or this is the revenue data, sorry, I apologize. This shows the same gap that we're showing. The residential is less than the total or decreasing throughout the total, the percentage. Next slide, the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. So the current rate study was built for debt repayment, and included in that was a 20% covered by the San Ynez CSD and their contributions for the loan and loan repayment as well. One thing we wanted to add in here is possible considerations from Los Olivos CSD as well. We don't have a percentage in front of us, and we haven't finalized that number. We can assume maybe possibly 10% because they are half of what the size of San Ynez. But once we have that figure, that is something to consider as well in the next rate study, that we will also have Los Olivos contributing to this as well. The wastewater reserves are designed to cover other CIP projects as well. So the reserves are not necessarily just to cover this, but we have, like I mentioned, the mainline relining project. We've budgeted $300,000 for the first 3 years of that project, and then we drop it down to about $100,000 per year as well. So that's one of the major projects. We also have Fjord Lift Station, which I believe we have a CIP in there for $1 million on that project as well. As I mentioned earlier, we're currently seeking a low-interest loan through USDA. As that process is slowed down, we're discussed other options as well. Some of the other options are other loans from other facilities. Also, bonds have been thrown into the conversation as well. As we get more data and information on that, we'll be coming back to council for direction and sharing that information. Right now, the preliminary engineering report is delayed based off of design of the project and cost escalations. As I mentioned here, the project is at 30% design, but staff has shared some reconsiderations for the design, as our Corolla or engineering consultant reached out to us a couple months ago. As they reevaluated their cost considerations and their engineering estimates, the price tag went from approximately $18 million up to $25 million. So staff has thrown some considerations as far as removing certain aspects or processes through the plant and replacing them with less costly processes that would achieve the same requirements to stay within our permitting process. Also, the administration building was a big cost of that project. We've talked about probably building that either smaller or taking it into another phase and build that later in the process.
That's a 30% increase.
Yes.
Is it justified?
They share their data with us, and it shows the cost increases accordingly to what they have as their engineering estimate. We didn't go out and verify that data, but what we did do is tell them some considerations to bring those numbers down. Once we get a final PER for submittal, we will review that data and confirm what their numbers are saying. They did reach out a couple weeks later saying we've sharpened our pencils and we may be able to bring that down slightly, not a huge amount.
Do we need more capacity to take on Los Olivos? Or if we were to do nothing in terms of capacity expansion, can we absorb? Do we have enough capacity? to
Yes.
absorb their requirements?
Yes.
Okay.
We have enough to absorb their capacity as well. We currently operate about half capacity, a little less than half the capacity of what the plant is designed at. That's what's saying as and the city's wastewater. Any questions on the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project, where we are with that?
I do have a lot of questions about where we really are with USDA, because it feels like it's taken a long runway without a firm commit from them, either for grant or loan. I'm not sure why.
We were getting the runaround from USDA staff, and I don't.
Well, I know things changed,
Yes.
right? And without much explanation.
Well, as soon as we lost out on that grant, which was at the end of fiscal year 23, we had to take a whole different approach with USDA. They changed their whole process. Their staff was causing delays because now we're going for a loan versus having that grant built in. And so, again, with the cost escalations, we had to ensure that the environmental impacts didn't change either with the redesign, which they didn't, because we're staying within the confines of the original CEQA documentation and review. We are trying to push USDA, but we can't push them without having our PER available for them as well.
Just last comment on that is that it feels like we're soliciting from a single supplier, and that's never good, right? So my request would be, can we broaden our scope on who could, be a partner here beyond just a single supplier?
USDA has the cheapest money and for the longest term. So we're running that to ground. We can't really move forward with anybody else yet anyway, simply because, again, the preliminary engineering report, PER, Jose mentioned, has been revised a couple of times because of, first of all, the reduction or the elimination of the reclaimed water, and then it became an increase in cost. So these things have to be factored in or included in the PER. And so we've just, 3 or 4 months ago, I guess, gave them the updated one. And so we're waiting for them to give us the comments. At least that's my recollection where we are.
So we have to reevaluate the PER based off of the cost escalation. So that's where we are right now.
Right. So because of the cost escalation, we're looking at possibly removing like Jose mentioned, the administration building, or otherwise value engineering, which have to be reflected in the PER, and then it has to be resubmitted. So until USDA approves that, then we can't move forward with them. And again, until we have the cost ironed out, there's really not any way we can get financial consideration from another lender.
And I think the hard part about going parallel with other options is the requirements for other options. One example is the state SRF loan, the state revolving fund loan. That has quite a few more requirements and quite a few more reporting requirements to assume a loan with SRF. So to take on that financial responsibility of getting consultants to help with building that as well could take a burden. The timeline is frustrating, and we are pushing forward with it, but in the back of on the back burner, Randy has continued dialogue with the financial consultant to discuss other options if USDA does fall through.
We've also approached Congressman Carvajal's office about providing some funds, which he included in his ask, but until the federal government passes the budget, we won't know for sure if that's included.
And that would include grants as well as loans?
We're pursuing grants, as we've discussed before, because we're not a disadvantaged community. That's 10% oftentimes of the scoring that we're not even getting a single point. So with the federal government's recent change and not including those kinds of things in their grant requirements, that may improve our options or opportunities later. But right now we haven't been able to get anything significant. But our grant writers have helped us with the language for the earmark from the Congress, and then we're doing other things. But right now, everything's kind of in a holding pattern.
As Randy mentioned, every grant that's a high dollar value, we've been rejected based off of that one DAC requirement. We have pursued smaller grants. One example is the emergency generator out the plant. We are pursuing a grant right now for that. It looks promising, but I don't want to say any more until we know for sure where we are with that. But we are pursuing that. We have our application in. It's being reviewed right now by the state as well. I think it's through Cal OES. So we are trying to find smaller grants that can help mitigate some of these costs as well. Next slide, the local community comparisons. Again, I present this data not to pick on other communities or talk about what their financial struggles are or where they are, but mostly just to show where we stand amongst the local communities as far as where our rates are for consideration for 26, 27, but also future rate studies as well. The data that I'll be presenting here is used from the most recent agency rate studies that they've completed and their adoption of their rates for this fiscal year 25-26. As I mentioned, they have projected rate increases through the next 5 years at some of these agencies. Some of these agencies haven't completed a rate study since 2016 or 2022. So their rates will remain stagnant and throughout this demonstration as well. The wastewater data was compiled based on agency methodology. Some agencies charge a flat rate like we do. Some agencies include a consumption method in there to show how much water they're using to build their rate for the sewer charge. Some use winter months. For example, City of Lompoc, they take the 3 winter months usage and they use that data to compile their flow rate for their wastewater, their sewer charge. And those are all considerations that when we do the next rate study can be discussed as well. We can't change the methodology of the current rate study, but we can discuss that for the next rate study. So I just want to throw that out there as the methodology can't be changed of how we charge customers. So we can't change a class and say we want to charge this class more now in this next rate increase versus this class, because it was all built into the study through the Prop 218 process. The combined bill reflects water and sewer charges for single-family usage. I did skip a bullet here, apologize for that. The water data is based on a 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter, which is the majority of the meters within almost all systems. And it's based off of 12 units of water. That's the average that most rate studies or most agencies will use a comparison for. That's the average that a family of 3 or 4 will use in a month. The Solvang water rates fell 18% above the regional average in this fiscal year. The sewer charges are 6% above the regional average, and the combined bill is 30% above the regional average. These are staggering numbers, and they're sobering numbers showing where we stand throughout the 6 agencies that we're comparing against. Again, several agencies have rate increases forecasted over the next several years out, and I'll share that data as well. And what I'm going to do in the next few slides is show where we currently stand and where we would be in 2030 based off of projected rate increases from other agencies, and if we did no rate increase after the 25 or 26, 27 proposed increase.
Jose, why are something about these numbers doesn't make sense? So if our combined bill is over 30% over average, but we're only 18 and 6, like it should be lower than 18. I don't know why it jumps to 30%.
That's a great question. And when I was reviewing my slideshow this afternoon, I did see that number as well, and it caught my attention. So I apologize for that.
Is there some other variable in the mix that, because it's an average and that consumption would factor in?
Not that I could see or that I
Okay.
found reviewing it this afternoon. Sorry. Okay. So the next slide, you can see the comparative data. I have charts here showing where we stand with the water utility bill, the sewer bill, and the combined bill. Keep in mind the combined bill is taking a water bill from San Ynez ID number 1 and San Ynez CSD sewer bill. They don't have combined services out in the San Ynez Valley. They have separate services. As you can see, the average bill, total combined bill is about $173. Solvang's at $225. Most other agencies are lower than that. You have San Ynez, who's above that, and City of Santa Barbara, who's above that as well.
So can you comment on Buellton and Santa Maria, why they're so low?
Yes. So we go to Santa Maria. If you take the denominator of how many accounts are being charged for the services, and you put that towards their total project cost or their total O&M costs, that's a bigger denominator to factor into paying for those costs. So that's why their utility bills are slightly low, or quite a bit lower than ours. As far as for Buellton, again, as I mentioned, I don't want to speak on their issues, but they are having to increase their rates substantially over the next 5 years based off of their rate study. At the end of 2030, fiscal year 29-30, they're looking at $105 sewer charge for their residents as well. A month, yes.
Do you know if Santa Barbara plans to increase their rates?
Yes, so
over the
Santa
next 5
Barbara.
years?
Santa Barbara has their rate increases through fiscal year 28 as well. They're looking at 10% for each year for water and 9.5% for wastewater year over year on their rate increases as well. Again, City of Buellton's going to go from $39.81 to $56.71 for the fixed charge on the meter. Their consumption charge will go from $3.41 to $4.85 for consumption charges, and their sewer will go from $58.96 this fiscal year to $103.66, per month come 29-30. Again, these are all proposed increases based on their rate study. Their councils or their boards can make the decision if they want to implement those increases as well. Again, as I mentioned, you have ID1. Their last rate study was completed in 2016, and it ran through 2021. They haven't had a recent rate study that I'm aware of that I could find online. City of Lompoc, their most recent rate study was, the last rate adoption was 2017. So they haven't done an increase for the City of Lompoc. But I know the City of Lompoc did some major upgrades during that last rate study as well. We'll go to the next slide, the local community comparisons for 2030 projections. Data is used from the most recent agency rate study projections as well. The data compiled is based on the same parameters as the previous slide, with 12 HCF, a 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter, and sewer bill being done, completed by the methodology of the agency. Solvang water rights fall within 10.5% above the regional average. Again, Solvang sewer charges are nearly identical as the regional average come 2030, but the combined bill is 24.2%. Again, I'm not sure where that escalation comes from. I'll have to review that to see where it comes from. The next slide is the utility bill comparative data with the 5-year projection. You could see that we still are up there and comparatively to the rest of the agencies, but we do close that gap based off of the projected increases for the other agencies that are going out to 2030 as well. We'll go to the next slide if there's no questions. The next slide, we'll talk about capital improvement projects and need considerations for the future. The water mainline replacement program, the timeline change, and price escalations. As I mentioned earlier, when we did the initial rate study in 2022, we built in water mainline replacement projects every other year. So we had 1 year we would have design, the next year we would have construction, next year design, next year construction. Because of the substantial cost increases, we changed the formatting of how we do that. Now we have a year break, so we go design, construction, break, design, construction to push those projects out. So we are deferring projects because of the inability to keep up with inflation and the cost escalations for these projects. An example of that is I looked back at the Friedensborg Canyon project, and we were at about $370 per linear foot. based off of the project. That was overall cost. That wasn't just laying the pipe. That was overall cost and the contract for that project. For the Nyborg Estates, we're about $460 per lineal foot. And I did confirm with Tierra. I asked him if he can give me some numbers from his 2020 era to now, and they've increased substantially as well. And so he contributes it to the cost for piping, for the cost for metals, the tariffs, the COVID costs right after COVID, everything increased substantially. Labor as well. The cost for labor has increased quite a bit for these jobs out there in the field. Future well development, some possible locations. We have obviously HCA middle well, which we have to complete. Lot 72, we have a well that showed some promise. And Sunnyfields, we have a well out there that has been drilled and been evaluated and shows some promise as well. There's also the ever-eluding River Wells project that we're waiting for more legal feedback, so that way we can proceed with that one as well. There's possible wellhead treatment projects. I think I mentioned several months back is we're going to have to keep in mind that treatment is going to become a reality for water as well as wastewater in the future. May not happen in this next rate study, but at some point, some of these parameters, some of these sampling, the state does what's called UCMR, uncontaminated monitoring regulations, where they sample different constituents to see if they need to set thresholds. After they complete that data, it's every 5 years, I believe, they set a new one out. They determine if they need to set regulations for some of these constituents. You can see on the slide here, perchlorate was one of those constituents that wasn't monitored or regulated quite a few years ago. Now it is. We had one of our wells take a hit on that perchlorate level and has been taken out of service, well 4. And that was one of our decent producers. So there's going to be some wellhead treatment possibilities there at that well. And just based off a rough quote from a company that could provide the treatment processes, we're looking at about $1 million just for the infrastructure to treat that well. Obviously, if we do go wellhead treatment, we would have to do other considerations of possibly a centralized treatment plant or location, so that way you can get the best bang for that process. We have the reservoir expansion projects. Reservoir 1, which is at the top of LSL Road, we want to expand that, and also we'll replace the roof on that one. Reservoir 3, we want to expand our capacity out there as well. The water shop, we're having discussions about remodeling the office and the water shop out there. Some of the electrical, the ducting has been outdated or needs to be replaced. And also we currently have 5 staff members sitting out there in one small room, so we want to expand that and clean that up. That's contingent on other capital projects for the city as well. AMI and customer portal projects, that's on the horizon. I feel good about getting that out before the end of this fiscal year, at least out to bid and get a contractor selected to start that project. I think it's going to be a very beneficial component of the water billing system, and I know that was one of the goals council had several years back, and also members of the public spoke that they wanted that as well, to be able to monitor and manage their water usage. Reservoir 4, that's the cisterns that are up out at LSL Ranch as well, as at the end of Riley Road up there. Those have been in service for decades now, and there's been no upgrades to those cisterns, and they need to be expanded or at least modified for any future damage that could occur. Source water monitoring program for the wastewater treatment plant compliance. We're going to have to start monitoring the source water, monitoring the discharge limits that are percolating into the ground. So we're going to have to consider drilling a well upstream, which means we'll have to find a location to drill this well, and that require easements and agreements with landowners upstream of the wastewater treatment plant as well. I will say that if we do go through this source water monitoring program for the wastewater treatment plant compliance, it takes away it eliminates the need to meet the salt management plan at the wastewater treatment plant for building the treatment plant to treat those. This will manage that by monitoring what our what our influence is to the groundwater. So we still have to make sure we manage and monitor the salt components, but we wouldn't have to treat them if we can stay within compliance of what we're contributing to the groundwater.
Will that reduce the overall cost of the two?
No, the current project was not designed to treat salts.
Nope.
It'll avoid that. It potentially could.
It-
Avoid a build out for,
Salts.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But one thing we can keep in mind is that we are building this plant for possible expansion of recycled water in the future. We'll have a stub out and be able to build that recycled water as well. If we are able to produce recycled water and find a beneficial use for the recycled water, that also eliminates the need to have to treat the salts.
The only way to reduce salt is reverse osmosis, and that's a very expensive proposition.
One of the cost projections for building a reverse osmosis treatment plant was, I believe it was up to $80 million to build one locally. The sewer lift station upgrades, as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 lift stations that are in need of repairs and upgrades. The sewer collections, manhole and reline rehab projects, those are on the horizon as well. Again, those 2 projects have been pushed or delayed to keep the coffers of the wastewater treatment plant fund in the positive, to show that we have funds available seeking these loans or possible grants. I think I mentioned most of the capital improvement projects, but just so you're aware, for the water fund, we have a valve and hydrant replacement program that we also try to complete each year. We were initially budgeting $50,000 per fiscal year to complete that, but as we defer those costs to push out, we're doing it every other year now, $50,000 to replace hydrants and valves in the system. The portable emergency generators, those were also a cost that were built into the early portions of this rate study. We purchased one, it has arrived. The second one we're deferring out, and that's about a cost of about $250,000 as well. We have the AMI system is built into this one. The Riverwell projects, those costs are pushed out to 2031 and beyond. Reservoir 1 expansion, those are pushed out to 27, 28, so that will be included in the next rate study. Lot 72 well, that's pushed out beyond 2030. Reservoir 1 replacement, that's pushed out to about 2030, 31. The construction of the well 23, which is a Sunnyfields well, that's pushed out to beyond 2030 as well. The sewer project, we have the lift stations that need to be completed. We have the manhole and sewer line replacement project as well. As I mentioned, we budgeted $350,000 for these next 3 years, and then $100,000 the following 2 years to complete that project. We recently had a break out at the LSL golf course, and that was through one of our siphons. The old clay pipe collapsed, so we had to make a repair. We're waiting to see what that cost is going to be, but that's why we definitely need to hit this out there at the golf course, because we have quite a bit of siphon inverts that need to be repaired. The wastewater treatment plant, obviously the major project is the upgrade to the project. There are waste activated sludge valves that needed replacement. We did those projects in-house, so we saved quite a bit of money. We had budgeted $100,000. I believe we completed that for $20,000 in-house by doing the work. Bout press rehabilitation, we're deferring that, as when we do the overall project upgrades, we will complete that as well. Aeration basin maintenance replacements, again, we're doing those in-house. Pond dredging, we have to go into the pond every so many years to dredge the pond to take out any sludge, so that way we can keep capacity within the pond. And again, the fjord lift station upgrades, that project as well is $1 million. We're going to start that process this fiscal year, hopefully getting some of the minor repairs done, and then next fiscal year do some of the major upgrades out there. The next slide, wanted to just present some considerations that were discussed. If we do half of the proposed increase half the percentage, the total percentage that was proposed, or a 0% increase this next fiscal year. The short-term rate relief, it improves affordability, but reduces long-term capital readiness. As we are all aware, the climb later will always be steeper. The price will always increase, and so you'll always end up paying more if we continue deferring or not doing small, incremental, smart increases each fiscal year. So again, these slides will show implementing a 0%, a 2%, and a 5% increase for the water, and they'll show a 0, a 7%, and a 15.5% increase for the wastewater. The next rate study, I'm hoping we could start that process early on, first quarter or beginning of second quarter of 2026, and so that way we could be ahead of the ball game. With that being said, we want to make sure that we have plenty of input from the community and also from council. There are other considerations that have been discussed for offsetting future rate increases, which staff is discussing and would like to bring to council at a future date for those considerations on offsetting some of the future increases as well. The next slide will show the water fund fiscal year 26-27 rate scenarios. You can see the bar graph, 0% increase, 2%, again, 5%. The full 5% increase sustains the projected water revenues near $6.6 million. Reducing to 2% or reducing all the way down to 0% would decrease revenues $150,000 to $300,000 over the next fiscal year as well. The unrestricted reserve balances would continue to decrease without maintaining these rate increases the next fiscal year. Continuing to deplete reserves will limit the cash on hand and ability to complete the CIP projects, but also be ready for any anticipated or projected debt service as well.
Jose, when you're this 0, 2, or 5% increase scenarioing, is that just apply to the consumed variable rates, or would that apply to the base rates as well?
That would apply to all revenues. What we did is we used projected revenues based off of where we currently are and added a 5%, a 2%, and a 0%.
When Jose, if I may, talking about all the water, can you give us an update on the Riverwell status?
I can, but I'd like to defer to legal counsel on that one.
Not much has happened since
Yeah,
the
I
last
know.
update. We are still waiting for a draft proposed order from the administrative hearings officer. She emailed last week saying that her at this point, the expected date for that is March 2026, which would be over 2 years since the end of the hearing.
Thank you.
We'll go to the next slide, which is the wastewater fund rate scenarios. Again, the full 15.5% increase sustains projected revenues near $2.7 million. We're demonstrating 7%. We're holding at 0%. And those will decrease revenues by approximately $130,000 to $340,000 over that next fiscal year. Again, the unrestricted reserve funds would decrease throughout this process if we don't increase the rates. And same thing with the wastewater. Continue to deplete the reserves could limit our ability to apply for loans or grants and also complete CIP projects. And this is my last slide. So these are some of the recommendations from staff for consideration. The city should implement the proposed rate increases for 26-27 for both water and wastewater. We should begin the discussions for the next rate study to discuss any possible future increases. And again, I want to start that either end of the first quarter or beginning of the second quarter of 2026, so we're ahead of the ball game and we could discuss other options for offsetting any possible increases. Randy had a great idea of possibly forming an ad hoc committee with public forums for transparency and input. The last rate study we did have public forums. We were just coming out of COVID, so some of the restrictions were there where people couldn't come out in public. So we want to make sure that we have all that involvement and that we have a few more meetings for public input and also ad hoc with council members on that committee as well. Staff is continually reassessing the CIP plan, and we're prioritizing projects based off of the need and based off of the projected cost for those projects. Steady manageable increases will alleviate huge burdens in the future. So if we continue kicking the can down the road, those costs will just continue to increase, and we'll be facing those later on down the road. We'll just be pushing it down for someone else to have to manage. Maintaining satisfactory reserve funds will help with offsetting current and or future debt and need for procuring loans as well.
One of the things I just was thinking about that, they didn't even talk about is on the domestic water supply. So the water comes out of our faucets. There has been recent determination that what they call forever chemicals, PFAS, PFOS, are harmful to health. We do have a couple of wells that show low readings. They have not established a maximum contaminant level for those yet. I fully expect that they will. That's another one of those things that probably the only way to treat it is reverse osmosis or some kind of more expensive process. So none of this discussion includes the impact of that. Now, it's not something that's going to happen next year or the year after, but it will happen. And to the extent we might feel we have too much revenue or can lower the rates, that's going to add to the steepness of the hill we have to climb when the time comes.
But it also suggests that we need to strongly pursue some new wells.
Yes, and that's why we have those future wells built out. But keep in mind that we are on the same aquifer. So you could pursue those wells, and those could still be influenced by the same contaminants of the current wells and those levels as well. So my last slide. Thank you. Any questions?
Jose, thank you for the material. It's really a good assessment, pretty solid assessment. Pretty concerning too, because I think, one of the reasons we're talking about this is we got some reactions from the public in the last rate increase. So I'm worried that we've hit, the price tolerance, if you will, from our consumers, and they have oftentimes nowhere to go because so much of our community is in a class where they're retired or on fixed income. So it worries me quite a bit. And so far what you're projecting is there's no end to this. What I do want to see is some assessment that isn't necessarily debt service, but might be bond, because at least if we put something in the tax burden for residents, they can take it as a write-off. So they get some relief for constant increases, if that's what we're really facing. And then I'd like to understand if there's another source of funding, which could either be from the Measure U or the Measure, there are RMOC committees that I know that's supposed to be traditionally for general fund and isn't necessarily meant to cross over, but we've got to poke on that a little harder or explore a tax basis just for the water fund.
Those are all options that we've discussed and that we're hoping to bring to council for consideration as well.
Okay, great.
Okay. I had a question on your supplement that you gave out. You have here a category for hotels with dining. Hotels without dining, where would they come into this equation? Or is it?
I would think they would come into commercial, Wendy. Do you know? They would come into commercial.
That would be lumped in the commercial side. I'm just trying to get an idea as hospitality, what percent that is.
I actually don't know what the percent of hotels without dining is, but they would fall under that commercial.
Okay. Okay, I can do the math on that. The other question I had, Jose, is are there, for hardship situations or people that are in threat of disconnection or inabilities, are there any city subsidies or anything like that that we have a pool of or things for that?
No, we currently don't have anything budgeted for that, and that's a legal issue that we would have to definitely consider, because you don't want to supplement payment for those constituents with the other ratepayers paying for that.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was a nonprofit or somebody that offers those types of things.
That's a great question. I don't know if there's anything out in the community that can help with that. I can look into that, see if there is some type of local nonprofit that can assist with bills as well.
I've had some conversations with Erica at People Helping People. She asked that question once before to me. And as Jose pointed out, the way the rates are set up, we're not allowed to charge others more so other people can pay less. We can charge, I mean, the way the law is written, we can only charge what it costs to provide that service, whether it's water or whether it's a fee for a building permit. So it's not legal to subsidize. Now, potentially, People Helping People or another nonprofit like that could ask the city for money that they would then use to help people pay their water bill. But we can't just give it that way
Right.
or provide that.
Okay. And then I'd like you also consider for, perhaps privatized partnerships of some sort, as well as other, I know a lot of, like hotels have a resort tax or a resort fee. It might be something that we can offload some of this to our visitors, because it's the perception, and I'll say perception because I don't know for sure, is that it's expensive as it is because of our visitors. So I don't know the reality of that or not.
Those are two options that we're discussing as well internally to bring back for consideration.
Well,
Thank you.
Can you verify or confirm, Jose, we still have different rates for the different class of consumers, correct? Consumption rates? So our commercial irrigation consumers, who've actually grown, in this case, like 50% in the consumption over the last 3 years, they're paying less than a standard resident as a rate schedule.
I don't have those figures, and I think what I've been discussing with utility billing was trying to figure if we can pull those reports, because based off of the amount of residential meters in the system, and 83% or 67% of the meters are residential, they have the most cost burden on the system. So that's why the rate study was built that way. I did have a quick conversation with our
But
consultant.
you're making me ask the question. This is not, let me clarify my question, because Randy pointed out it's not legal to charge different users differently. But we are, because if you just had your rate card, your rate schedule, along with this table, we actually are charging different consumption rates by class of user.
So I don't have the figures in front of me, but generally the rates have to be proportional to the service being provided for that particular property. So there can be differences in classes sometimes, but it has to be justified and under Prop 218. So there's got to be a proportionality there, and that's what the rate study does, is it justifies those different costs. And so the amount, again, I don't have the numbers, but the amount for residential will be set at what is based on their burden on the system, and then similarly to industrial and commercial.
We're never going to get close to that because there's two more skew. We'll always skew more to the residents. There's more meters for residents. But if you calculate in the size of their, their, what do we call that?
Their meter?
Their yeah, the meter size, right? Then, and volume, the burden is probably closer than fractional. I guess I just want to make sure that the residents aren't, in some calculation, subsidizing commercial use because they're paying a higher rate.
And so the fixed costs and charges for those businesses and those agencies with larger meters is assumed in this rate study. I'll give you an example. If you have a 2-inch meter, you are paying a fixed charge of $705 a month. So that's where we're recouping those fees to make sure that we get the money from them for the burden on the system. We can reevaluate that information in the next rate study. I had a quick conversation with our consultant. He says you could definitely reevaluate it, but we can't change it during this rate study. And the data that was built around this rate study was from the previous years prior to this rate study. So that data has obviously been changed based off of what we've been seeing these last couple of years.
And it's my understanding, I'm sorry, one other thing, if it's a ADU, it's still just one meter and one sewer charge, or is that not the case?
That is correct.
Okay. So even though there's another unit, it's just the same bill. It's just a matter of the usage volume.
Correct. And we put the burden on the customer to show us if the water usage, we ask for water calculations to show that their water usage can be provided through that meter. If they do determine that they need more water, they do have to upgrade their meter, which changes their fixed charge and obviously their volumetric charge based off of the usage.
Okay. And then finally, for me, on your chart, what I don't know, where do we as a city fall into this? Because we have our parks and recreation and irrigation for that and the use for bathrooms and things of that nature. How much water are we using as a consumer?
I don't have that information, but I would think we'd fall within public buildings on this class type, but I don't have exactly how much water we're using. Keep in mind, Sunnyfield is ID1 water, so the Solvang Park and HCA are city water, but Sunnyfield is ID1 water.
Okay. So that's not even in this.
But that is a charge that we still pay for,
Right.
yes.
Yeah. In the future, I'd like to have that breakdown. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other concerns or questions for Jose? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We're now going to move on to public communication for non-consent items. Public comment? No, this is for public communications. Would you read that into the report for us, please, Madam Clerk?
At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and on consent. Time limit is 3 minutes, and we will start with in-person public comments first.
To begin with, I have Jean Simont, and on deck would be Warren Small.
Comments and thoughts on the May 13th Solvang City Council meeting. I appreciate the diversity, education, and experiences of our council and the countless hours involved in which probably factors less than $4 an hour. Thank you. The City Council seems to be exasperated at the 200 pages of changes of the approved plan. I would expect the changes. Building cottages 2/3 the normal size and having 5'9" doors will have many challenges. This huge deviation in size changes the situation to a 3-dimensional functional work of art. When the project transcended my imagination, I realized that this is an amazing project that will be noted and appreciated internationally. The inclusivity of St. George to everyone in the artistry of this development was touching. A solving project with everyone's input. I ran into Reverend Billington of Hidden Wings. He told me about how welcoming and generous St. George was with his time when he and his son Adam dropped by unannounced. I had to chuckle back to the last meeting when Adam unsuspectedly stole a kiss on St. George's neck, and remarkably, St. George was tolerant and kind. I was impressed. I was disappointed that only the mayor took the time to meet with Mr. George at the construction site. The city council members didn't give him a chance, and he was denied to continue the appeal 2 weeks so there could be a moment of communication with the council members. The council members took sides and only considered the voices of the Planning Commission and the DRC, who appeared to be vexed with all the changes. I kept hearing that St. George must follow the rules and there must be respect for the process. The appeal is following the rules and is part of the process. The City Council has the power, and to not consider his thoughts are tyrannical. Claudia talked excessively about how much money St. George has. Think, he doesn't even get to own the land. Those who are economically secure can be virtuous. An example is the 3 wise men who bowed down before a homeless baby in a manger. This prejudice should be addressed by Elizabeth, who is a facilitator for unconscious biased training. St. George doesn't seem to be a biased person. His kind wife immigrated here. English is her second language and is empowered with her own business, the Lavender Store in town. I'm glad to know that Mark has not had a serial meeting prohibited under the Brown Act, as he stated clearly that he hasn't talked to anyone about the appeal, including St. George. It makes me wonder, did the others? Do other council members fully understand the law? What I'm trying to say is, let's start over, grant a continuance to the appeal. Everyone can meet at the project and have some real charitable communication over this 3-dimensional functional art development.
you.
Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you. Next is Warren Small.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm Warren Small. I represent the Village Collection Homeowners Association. And I'd like to talk to you about the temporary use permit you have filed for Lot 72 for a parking development over there for $300,000, I think you said it was going to cost. When the city got that land gifted to it, it agreed to certain conditions under a specific plan, and that was to keep the area in its natural habitat. And there's also an existing lease with the Historical Preservation Fund, which also is trying to keep that in its natural habitat. This development of a parking lot with this aggregate you want to put down in fences, I think is outside the purview of those agreements, and wouldn't be in the right context for that area and the agreements that you have signed. So we would like that you would agree to abide by the agreements that you have agreed to, and keep the land in the state that it currently is. And thank you.
Thank you. That's all the written requests I have. Is there anyone here that has any public comment to make? Any on Zoom with their hands up? Don't see any, so we'll close our public comment and move to City Manager's report. Mr. Murphy.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of quick ones. I want to remind the community that the next community cleanup will happen on Saturday, November 15th at Parking Lot 5, which is across the street here from City Hall. Now, there were some concerns raised by some of the local neighbors last time we did this site, and we've made some improvements to our planning for that. We have notified all of those neighbors that raised their concerns the last time, and they were mailed a notice about a week ago. So I have not yet heard anything, but encourage feedback. I'm optimistic that we will resolve any of the issues that came up the last time. Also wanted to point out on the advanced calendar, we have a discussion about the urban growth boundary coming soon, as well as stormwater annual reports and those kinds of things, updates to committee assignments. And then tentatively, we're looking to do with council goal setting in February, either the 7th or the 21st. It'll be a Saturday, avoiding the 14th for obvious reasons. Anybody that has a Valentine, we don't want to keep them away. So I'm looking to confirm that, but I'm just, again, alerting the community to that so that we can get ahead of the budget process. So, because many of the goals obviously will have an impact on the budget. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you. Any questions of the manager? Well, he's getting off early. Easy. Okay. Then we'll go to item 5. Madam Clerk, would you read that in the
Government Code Section 53232.3D, AKA B1234, and Government Code Section 84308, AKA SB 1439 report out. Ex parte communications, council comments, requests.
Thank you. Any reports? Pretty quiet up here. I'm sure you've been busy in the last 2 weeks doing something. Do you have some? No? Am I the only one that's a report? Okay, let me. Of course, I have a lot of things to go over. It's been busy for the last couple weeks. First of all, I want to congratulate and thank our Public Works Department for a haunted house that was the best ever, according to attendance and effect. And a special thanks out to contractor Fred Lagerman, who comes up with themes and design, Jalen, Elsa, Candace, Terry Simmons, Wendy, who worked on decorating the haunted house and or controlled front of the house during the event, Parks and Maintenance crew for their help in assisting with road closures, loading and setting up, cleaning up the haunted house. A lot of hours, hard labor, and many steps by all. I guess there was over 5 miles per docent. That's a lot of laps underneath.
My wife can attest to that. That's what her Apple Watch said.
Well,
over 5 miles each night.
And special extra thanks to volunteers going beyond and Vivi and Ken Ziegler, Annie and Val Nicholas, Cassie McGuire, Ryan Metzger, Athena McClandish, Terry Harmon, Claudia for her makeup. Well done. I saw some of your victims. Pretty good job. Chantel Green with the Solvang Theater, Solvang Festival Theater, and Kevin McConnell for music and sound. All the guys walked, like I said, about five miles, and the monsters, the haunted house, without them wouldn't have been as good as. So this is the 31st annual haunted house, huge success, and specifically we had 1,137 visitors on Friday night and 1,634 on Saturday, a record number of participants. Thank you to the vendors and the street fair. I think it was Whiskey and Rye and a couple others. And then the cleanup continues for the rest of the week. All funds raised go back to our Parks and Rec programs and subsidized cost to keep them all affordable for all. However, when you consider your time ad and the sponsorship to the theater, it's about a break-even event. So if you had to pay all those volunteers, it'd be a really a scary event. All right. So thank you to Jenny for sharing that with us. Next up, I've got. I was at the State of the Schools at San Ynez Valley Union High School. Really nice event. They hope to make that a annual endeavor. The student body was engaged with all that, as well as many of the high school board members and staff and what they have going on there. And they appreciate using our streets for their homecoming, and had a great event for that as well. I attended the SB SCAG meetings and the APCD meetings this past 2 weeks ago. I also went to a chamber mixer that was at the Alisol, actually last week, Tuesday. And then there was a gathering. We had the Danish Sisterhood of America was in Solvang for their annual visit. probably about 40 ladies with their, some of them brought their spouses. And it was at they were here for several days, but I caught up with them at the Elverhoy and congratulated them. There was an award for the one that came the furthest. Well, they came the furthest, but they were also there. They'd been the member the longest, so they got a twofer. And then the youngest member, or not the youngest member, the newest member, I guess would be the way to say it. The newest member, there was two of them that had joined the same time, and they were acknowledged. And then the host, Glinda Madrid, was acknowledged for her help in bringing the Danish Sisterhood of America to our little Solvang. And that's nice because if you are the Danish capital of the world, where else should they come, right? So Danish capital of America, not the world, but there you have it. That's what I have for those items. Mr. Murphy?
I may have misheard, but I want to clarify that the event was put on by the Park and Rec Department, not the Public Work Department.
Oh, did I say Public Works?
That's what I heard. That may not be what you said, but that's what I heard.
Again, congratulations to the Public Works, not Public
Parks.
Parks and Recreation. Thank you. Now you got me saying it wrong. Okay. Public Parks and Recreation, and that is Jenny and her team. And then I know Candace was engaged with that as well. So,
Oh, yeah, everybody was.
so
I will-
a
I will
good
go-
team effort.
I will go back and mention that I was there because they did have an employee and council walkthrough if you wanted to go through it. And I did attend that and went through that thing, and Fred stood around with his horn, and he'd get behind the door. You'd walk by, he'd hit the horn, and you'd jump. But it was an amazing, and we wasn't even completely finished when we walked through it, but it was just stunning what they did.
Well,
did
in
it.
all, I want to give a shout out to the whole month of October, turning it into a Halloween fest, if you will. And I've noticed much more traffic and tourists this month than ever before, I'd have to say. And I'll make an announcement to our Thriller dancer here. Anna Marie was a dancing zombie for Thriller, and the makeup job was so good I could not recognize her. So it wasn't until she spoke that I said, "Oh, I know who you are." So anyway, thank you for that and all the volunteers. Okay, let's move on to. Do you have any other afterthoughts or want to get on record here? Okay, we'll move on to item 6, consent items. Would you read that into the record for us, please?
Consent is for routine administrative city matters and is approved with one motion. These items are discussed only on request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak during the public communications portion of this agenda.
Okay, any concerns or items to pull?
I wanted to pull item 6E and make a couple recommendations.
Okay,
So I'll make a motion to approve items 6A, B, C, D, and F.
I'll second it.
okay. It's been properly moved and seconded to approve consent items 6A, B, C, D, and F. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. We will now open up for discussion for item 6E as an echo.
So I just had a couple things that I think are simple fixes. First of all, on the qualification process, we have for the Design Review Committee and the Planning Commission, the Design Review Committee and the RMOC Committee, a set of zip codes that are required for, or that need to be residents in those zip codes to be qualifiers for consideration for appointment of those two committees. But the zip codes don't match. So I'm curious why. What was the rationale that we said?
Would you share what page you're on?
Yeah, I'm on page 75 and page 76.
Oh,
So we have 4 zip codes for the RMOC committee and 3 zip codes,
75.
3 zip codes for the RMOC committee and 4 zip codes for the design review committee. So it made me, so it could be a typo or just an oversight, but it also made me ask the question, what was the rationale for choosing the zip codes that we chose? Because Buellton's missing, for example.
Hold on. Just getting oriented.
Sure.
Compare them, because I think you have identified a typo. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
section 3B and section 10B.
So I think we inadvertently omitted zip code 93464 from section 10 of the ordinance, which is from the RMOC committee. So the RMOC committee was supposed to be just adding San Ynez Valley to, because, let me back up. Under the current code, there are no qualifications for the RMOC committee, and so we thought there should be some sort of tie to the area. Planning commission is you have to be a resident in the city, but for RMOC and the DRC, or at least for the DRC, the decision had been made when that body was created that people didn't have to reside in Solvang because we wanted a little broader net, because there might not be sufficient number of people with relevant experience for the design review committee just living in Solvang, and maybe let's get people from the broader San Ynez Valley area. Those zip codes, as I recall, were chosen because they are part of San Ynez Valley. If I wasn't aware that, I didn't double check them for this, but I guess Buellton zip code is not in one of those, is what you're saying?
It occurred to me, didn't know what the rationale was, how we chose those zip codes, and DRC makes sense to me. Like, we need to, perhaps, there are many people in the valley that care about Solvang and how it looks. Perhaps you cast a wider net. For RMOC, this is oversight. This is like voter representation of oversight. So I'm wondering why we're not just choosing the zip codes of the voters.
Which would just be
Which would just be Solvang zip
Solvang residents, yeah.
So, and I don't recall us talking about it. I just
I agree, but
what it was.
Ballard has the same zip code as we do.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's not a determining factor with your logic. So maybe it should just be within the city limits I see where you're going, and I agree with you.
I see both sides too, because we want volunteers. I mean, casting a wider net says we get lots of talent, but in this case for RMOC, is the right argument to really have voter representation?
We should, because those are city funded taxes, the TOT and the city sales tax.
Yes.
So I tend to agree with you. It should be Solvang only, and it's an advisory committee. So if you only had 4, we could get by with that. So
I think so too.
I don't think a larger net. So I tend to agree with you, but I would again probably just make it a resident of the city.
It does, so I'm not reading it word for word, but I think it says business owner and/or resident for
Business
RMOC.
owner,
Is that right?
Yes.
So, because then,
business
as
operator
soon as
with
we
a-
slip into
Yeah.
business, they may or may not be a voter, but
Right.
they could bring
Yeah,
some
okay.
skill that we need from a financial perspective, or, reading a balance sheet and things like that.
Then, yeah, I agree with you. I think then would we say we prefer owners and residents from this area? So you could include both owners and residents. I don't know. I'll defer to legal on that.
So currently it says that an RMAC member shall be a legal resident or a business operator with a business in San Ynez Valley. So the resident, you have to be a resident, or the business owners is the only part that expands beyond. So are we saying that we want only business owners with businesses in Solvang?
I would be okay with that because that sort of, it goes beyond the voter base, but they're clear stakeholders, and we probably will get some expertise that we would like participating in oversight.
Good catch. Thanks.
Yeah, not the zip codes anymore, just.
So
Would you suggest that the business owner have a business license?
yes, a valid and current business license.
I think that would be appropriate.
We tighten this up a little.
We can.
Okay. Go ahead.
No,
Do you want to say?
I was just going to ask if maybe you're getting there, if you wanted to amend any of the zip codes on the DRC side.
No, I think I
Okay.
didn't. I mean, I'm open to input. Yeah, because but the difference was noticeable. That's what triggered all my questions. So
Thank you for catching that. That was an inadvertent error.
Which I still feel would be great if we mention somewhere in the ordinance that there is an application or some document for council members who have to ratify an appointment decision with a vote, that you have a document to refer to so you can validate the qualifications are being met by the candidates. So it's still missing. I understand it's a process we have to do, but should we mention it?
I believe one of the requirements has to be a registered voter. So that would identify where they are living. And if they have a business in town, we could verify that.
How do the council members have to verify? You're asking us to vote.
When the clerk does it,
And so where do we verify before we vote?
But they're vetted before they come to us for the roster of qualified candidates are
Okay.
already vetted before they show up here.
So clerk is verifying qualification before we vote.
They're supposed to be, yeah.
Okay.
I am vetting what they put on their application, their address, that they're registered to vote at that address, what district, their legal name, et cetera. But I do not verify their qualifications in terms of their expertise in the matter.
Okay. Third point is just in the RMOC, because the chair of the RMOC brought it up. The language in section 11B says they shall meet twice annually at any time. But I think we want to say shall meet no less than, and give them the opportunity to call a meeting, especially in the budget review cycle, so that they do have an option to call a meeting whenever they think it is, they make a good contribution, a solid contribution. So I'm suggesting just a minor language change on 11B for meetings, section 11B, that it just says shall meet no less than twice annually.
Any concern? That's fair.
Okay, good.
Any others?
That's it.
So how would we proceed? We proceed to vote with these modifications, or?
So these are non-typographical. I think these are good substantive edits. So we should bring it back for reintroduction at the next meeting. But I think that's easily done. So I think you can. We'll make the changes and we'll bring it back to introduce it, and then it'll
Okay.
come for second reading.
We'll table this.
Good.
Do we need to vote for the deferment?
No, you can just You didn't.
You'll bring it back.
Yeah, you'll bring
Okay.
it back. You didn't adopt it by
Yeah, no
second reading
action,
today.
so
There's
we'll
no
bring it back.
action. Yeah.
Okay.
Super, thank you.
Thank you. That satisfies item 6E for the moment. We'll go to there are no public hearings, so we'll go to discussion items. And we'll start with item 8A, City Hall feasibility study. Staff report, please.
Thank you. Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and Council. As I've identified in my staff report, I'll try and summarize it for those that haven't read it. But this current City Hall was, according to the plaque out front, constructed in 1969. We ran out of space soon thereafter, and then we acquired the Masonic Lodge, which was constructed in 1957 across the street. Minimal modifications were done at that time, and we continued to operate in these sites. Multiple inefficiencies occur among and between staff as well as the public. For instance, when somebody wants to do a building permit, they go over there to get the permit, but they have to come over here to pay it. And there's just a lot of wasted time between staff going back and forth. There's other inefficiencies that exist. The buildings are older. They lack current standard related to double pane windows. We suffer from serious lack of technology here in the council chambers, as we've evidenced tonight. And as well as just some of the other modern conveniences that exist in the technological world. A recent evaluation of current and near-term future needs for staff shows that we need about twice what we have between the combined spaces of the buildings here. And as I pointed out, they're not as energy efficient. Thus, given the design and construction timelines, the new City Hall is necessary sooner rather than later. We've evaluated options for relocation to existing buildings within city, but nothing feasible is available at this time. I provided a drawing, a rough sketch, rough order of magnitude for a depiction of what space might look like in the vacant lot across the street. And although some areas are called out as gym or office spaces, this is not a final design. It's simply shown to designate areas for future growth. This rough order of magnitude drawing, I was given a construction price tag today of between $8.7 and $10.3 million. Given a continual escalation of construction costs, it will likely increase 5% or more each year for the foreseeable future. In addition to numerous improved staff efficiencies, should the project move forward, there would be a variety of other community benefits. For instance, the fire department has expressed a need for more space. Obviously, we share the building with them, and they would they are very interested. I'm talking to Chief Hartwig, very interested in taking over any space we abandon in this current building. We have not negotiated any kind of purchase or agreement that would facilitate that, but they are interested. Additionally, once the annex is vacated, it would be available for other uses, one of which could be a new community library. But I've talked to library folks, they're very interested in that opportunity. If the library were to relocate, that would open up space in their current location. The Sheriff's Department is pinched for space and they need to remodel, so that's another option. And then the building that the Water Department occupies here behind City Hall, as you heard Jose mention earlier, they are cramped and in need of space. If we were to consolidate their space in part of the new City Hall, that would eliminate the need for that building, and we could potentially add another 10 or so parking places, maybe a few more, if that building were knocked down. So I'm hoping to get some direction from council to continue this investigation and bring back some more, clear cost, better design. There was an estimated cost for borrowing the money. Was also one of the attachments. Bond it or borrow it for various rates for 20, 30, or 40 years at various interest rates. So it's definitely not an inexpensive proposition, but it is something that could potentially be included in a bond offering or other opportunities for revenue, maybe grants. City Hall grants are hard to come by, but fire department and library we could get grants for. So those are things to consider. Anyway, to summarize it, looking for some direction on whether or not this is something that council is interested in pursuing, or if we should just continue to do what we're doing. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions?
No, I am very interested in seeing about partnering with the library. I know they need more space. The sheriff needs more space. Just about everybody needs more space. So, yeah, I'd like to go forward with exploring the possibility of expanding City Hall.
Is there a barter opportunity? I mean, so we could sell this space. So there's revenue offset potentially here with the fire department. But is that the same
Correct.
assumption we can make for the library and the sheriff negotiation? Is that
We don't
is that
know that.
revenue?
Currently, the fire department pays 50% of our utility costs for this space. And we don't receive any other revenue.
But no. I'm thinking they would potentially buy us out of this space.
They
correct?
could, yes.
And could we sell annex? We're paying for.
We
what are
could
we
sell
paying
the
for
location, but
library
typically when you, in the Surplus Property Act, complications that our city attorney could probably speak more to eloquently than I could, but that's one of the disadvantages of selling is you have to go through a process.
So we originally were going to use the Christian Science Reading Room building for staff expansion. Can we sell that? Because it's unused. It's basically has no plan, right?
I'm not aware of this Christian Science. You talk about the
is
building across
I think
the
it's
street?
410 or 420 Second Street.
Yes, the one with the pool. The one with the pool.
Right next to the Theater Fest.
Oh, yeah, no, the home across the street, that was a insurance office. It wasn't a Christian Science building.
Oh, my mistake.
Yeah. No, that was purchased to be a transit office. There's costs associated with refurbishing that, making it ADA compliant. When Roger was still here, he attempted on numerous occasions to get somebody to come in and give him an estimate. I know there were some delays in that. Right now, that's all kind of on hold. One of the thoughts is that could also become additional parking.
So we'd get rid of the building and level it?
That would be part of the project, yeah, intentionally.
Wow.
The
We spent $1
building
million
is not,
for that
I mean,
property.
it was built in the 80s or maybe even before then. The house is close to 100 years old.
Yeah.
Most of that was the transit fund.
Yeah.
Most of it.
So I guess I'm
But-
wondering can we look at a financial view of all the assets that could be converted toward offset the build out cost?
That would be part of the overall project,
You've
yeah.
given us like a couple of ideas,
Yeah.
but not a financial view of how do we make this work?
Well, my question would be more efficiencies. Do we generate the efficiencies you're looking for staff and conveniences by having it all located in one building as opposed to another? And then I think you and I have had this conversation before, or, I understand it's a luxury, in my opinion, to have a gym or locker rooms and things of that nature, unless you're going to convert them to, unless it's for recruitment or staff morale, then, perhaps, or it's daycare, whatever you need that space for to retain and keep top talent.
Right. And that's why I said that's was just something they put in there. We currently there's a gym set up on the second floor of the Veterans Hall that some of the staff uses. The locker room was not intended to be a gym locker room. That was the staff locker room. We have Public Works, we have Parks and Rec, we have water service people, that come in and need a place to keep their stuff, and occasionally have to clean up after having a messy day. So that would be the purpose of that locker room, not a gym locker room. But yeah, I agree. The gym idea, when that was one of the first things I thought of was, well, potentially a daycare center, or again, just space. This idea of at some point it could just be open space and internally and for future office needs. But or again, there was not the rough order of magnitude drawing that you see was based on input from staff, kind of a wish list, in some respect.
Right.
Not necessarily certainly not a final drawing.
Sure. What, unless I hear otherwise, I think it's kind of a green light here to take it further and see what your needs are and how you, where all the balls will land, including library, sheriffs, and fire, and what they would bring to the table to make everything balance.
I would just say, I feel like we have huge costs coming at us that are going to burden, that are mandatory, that we have to do, that include the bridge rebuild, that include potential water infrastructure and new wells, that include wastewater treatment plant. These are unavoidable expenses that are going to be on the backs of our residents and businesses. So if we are going to pursue yet another large expense, multi-million-dollar, that's going to require some debt service or a bond, we better be really diligent about the requirement and the assessment that this is a true need, and that we're assuming staff's growing. I haven't heard that we need staff growth yet. So really want to be careful that we're walking into this with real assessment and real diligence.
Correct. Yeah, staff will grow, but not crazy. 1 or 2 positions over the next 3 to 5 years. As our marketing efforts increase and more events happen here, we've added a part-time person. So we have the body here. It probably will become a full-time person in a year or two. But right now, if you look over there, she's just kind of out in the middle of the floor, not even a cubicle. There's additional needs potentially in some of the other departments, and I know there's some discussion about an administrative assistant for the water department. Now that may be able to be combined with one of the existing office staff. But again, it's just as we get, and then of course there's always the discussion about annexing, and we've talked a little bit about that. It's going to be a future conversation at council about the urban growth boundary and what that might look like. And there's ratios of staff to residents and those kinds of things. And again, it's not an immediate necessarily need, but over time you need more people. And unfortunately, I wasn't here. I was not unfortunately, but I obviously wasn't here in 1969 when this building was constructed. That was before we incorporated even as a city. But as time goes on, staff needs increase, or needs for staff increase because the workload increases. And the worst thing we could do is go ahead and get into a new building for the existing needs, and then in 3 to 5 years find out you need another space or two, and you're converting closets or something into office space. So this
I don't know
is
if that'd be worse than having space unused that we paid top dollar for.
but we can also sublet that space.
Okay, then let's look at where we have space being unused today and see if there's sublet capability or opportunity there too. Because I think we've got that on that 420 building.
Well, 2020 hindsight, when we purchased that building across the street when I first started, 2020 hindsight, I would have said that was a bad idea. That was literally only here in a few weeks when we closed that escrow. There are too many. That's part of the problem is what we have are older buildings. In order for them to be able to be leased under current in the current market. They have to be updated to ADA standards and fire safety standards and all those kinds of things. And those buildings are not suitable for that. And as I pointed out, Roger was looking to do that, but he had a hard time getting a contractor interested in doing any work.
Is it less expensive for new construction than retrofit? Do we know?
I would think generally yes. But
Generally speaking, yes, it is. So let's take the building over at 420. As Randy had mentioned, Roger, the previous Public Works Director, had sought to find a contractor to do the retrofit, and has not found one. We actually have a building permit that's ready to be issued for it. That building in of itself, if you walk through, has numerous ADA issues where at some point you're doing more than just widening the stairs.
Well,
So-
maybe that's a bad example. What if we retrofit like Rite Aid? I mean, just like a massive space.
That is just, it depends. It's kind of a reason why commercial retrofits are so hard to make it into residential, is that very aspect. Conversions of space are much more difficult when you're going from one occupancy to another. So in that instance, the Rite Aid is not set up to have multiple bathrooms or have multiple sewer lines in there to accommodate the water and sewer demands. So that retrofit then causes, a ripple effect in terms of cost. And that's what typically ends up happening when you have, in general, retrofit projects, taking them either from residential to commercial or vice versa.
I actually thought about that Rite Aid when it became vacant, but it's not enough square footage. I mean, to give us the space needs.
I just tossed it out as an example. That 420 building is not a good example because we didn't even do an inspection before we didn't have an idea what we were.
We did an inspection, but we basically determined that, that at least the thought process was we can fix this or we can update
Well,
this.
we didn't get, better said, we didn't get estimates of what the
Right, correct.
work required out of the inspection
Right.
would be.
So do you think you have enough direction at this point in time?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. We'll work together and come up with some options. Look at options about selling or otherwise transferring.
Before we finish, though, I want to open it to public comment.
There you go.
Before you close on this item. I have no sheets. Anybody on Zoom or otherwise that want? Okay, I guess I will close public comment.
So yes, anyway, as I was saying, I will work with staff and hopefully be able to bring something actionable to you in the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will move on to item 8, Bravo. Staff report, please. Or actually, Madam Clerk, would you read this into the record?
Discussion and possible action to introduce for first reading ordinance number 25-0385, amending Title 10 of the Solvang Municipal Code and adopting by reference the 2025 California Building Codes.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this evening is the first read for ordinance number 250385, and it's amending the our municipal code to adopt the 2025 California Building Code. So every 3 years, the California Building Standards Commission reviews and revises the California Building Standards Code, which includes administrative, building, the residential code, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, engineering, historical, fire code, etc. So typically we've done this before. Our last iteration was in 2022, and so we're adopting the 2025 standard. This is actually a state standard. So whenever someone asks, what's Solvang's building code, it's the state. It's like everyone else's. The only difference is each jurisdiction sometimes adopts exceptions or other additional qualifications that are required. There is one caveat this year. AB 130, which was enacted as a part of the state legislature's budget and went into effect on July 1st, now limits amendments to the California Residential Code. This was done to, one, give a little bit more certainty to builders, particularly to speed up production of houses, but also it was used as a way to ensure sort of the rebuild efforts that are going on the areas that have been affected, particularly by the Southern California wildfires earlier this year. So there is our residential code sections again were amended in 2022. All those exceptions carried over, so we're making no changes to any of those exceptions. The other issue that we have is that the Santa Barbara County Fire Department, through their Fire Protection District, they are our fire agency, so they will be the county will be adopting the fire standards in the next few weeks. So as a part of this, we've incorporated their draft ordinance language at this point. Once that gets adopted, we'll incorporate any other changes that were done to our version of the fire code as well. So sort of adopting the county standard. And the other bigger chapter that's in here that's been beefed up is what's called the Urban Wildfire Interface. And so those exceptions are already included in this draft ordinance. So again, we're just looking for introduction of first read. It's a pretty and go ahead and open up the public hearing. And with that, I'll close it to. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this one is set the date for the public hearing, which would be November 24th. And that would be the actual public hearing.
Okay. Any questions? I had a couple of concerns on your report. There is what's called the International Building Codes for Building Code, Residential Code, Merchant Unit, Mechanical Code, Plumbing Code, National Electrical Code. If we have the state, why do we need the international codes as well? What does this bring to the table, or how are they different from state?
So there are some instances where the international code provides gaps or national code, and so for that haven't been adopted by a state agency, it's actually common practice. Pretty much every single municipality not only adopts the state version, but also the international version, just to cover some gaps and then ensure sort of interpretation of code. It's very standard fare.
Well, which would supersede, the international or state?
The state always comes first, and then the international as a fallback.
I guess I don't want, how should we say, barriers to entry by just coding somebody to death on any development or the international codes. What do they add? I guess you say gaps. Give me an example, please.
I don't have an example off the top of the head. The state actually already does your barrier to entry. The state typically actually is more onerous. Pretty much majority of the time over the International Building Code. So
that's why I asked the question. Why do we have it at all?
Again, it's common practice, and it's there as sort of that safety net to be there if there's a challenge of the state code, and then our building official can utilize the International Building Code, which is usually less, less onerous. But again, it's very common practice.
Okay, so it's follow the leader who doesn't know where they're going, so to speak. I don't know. I'm just curious why we have it.
If there's any benefit in my 15 years of municipal planning, I've never seen the International Building Code utilized that in terms of just the backup.
Okay,
So.
Thank you. That's all I had. Any questions? I'll open it to public comment if there is anybody in Zoom, because the room's pretty empty except for the video guy. Oh, nothing to say? Okay. Well, then we are closing public comment and back to council for decision. Any questions or thoughts or ideas? If if I could add anything, I would just say delete the international codes that you have. I think it's either redundant or duplicit. We're doing it because everybody else does it. That I don't follow either.
Our building official things otherwise, along with pretty much every other building official, we would then kind of go rogue there.
But you said in your career, you've not ever
I haven't,
used it.
but again, you just never know when you need the fail safe, and that's there. So again, the International Building Code is a sort of an adopted standard. It's actually where the state starts, is the International Building Code. So to go counter to that,
I'm not saying go to counter. I just see it as duplicity. But maybe our legal advisor has different set or would like to add.
I would recommend adopting it as proposed by staff because the international, again, Raphael's kind of explaining the international codes are kind of the baseline, and then California has adopted their own more stringent codes on top of that. And if for any reason that the California code got invalidated, we would have something to fall back on that would be a standard to hold people to. And this is very formulaic. This is what it's the same thing every 3 years, basically. I mean, Raphael goes through and makes sure that, we've caught cross-references and updates, because the state updates the code every 3 years, and that's what we're, reflecting. And if there's any updates to international codes, we make sure that we're capturing that, and if we need to make local amendments to that as well. So that's why it's a triannual process, but we don't want to change the underlying body of what we're adopting for our building codes. We're just trying to update, because the state updated their codes, and then we have to go through this process to adopt them by reference so that our code refers to the correct current version of the state codes.
So including them is the path of least resistance for us.
correct. And there are instances where the California Building Code actually references the International Building Code. And so if you don't adopt the International Building Code, then the references don't exist. Therefore, there is no code to run against a check.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay. Okay. Well, I yield to the experts I just ask the questions. All right.
May I make one process comment?
Yes, ma'am.
So we need a motion to introduce the ordinance, and then we also need a motion to set the public hearing for, is it November 24th? So two motions, or two
November
pieces to the
24th
motion.
for the hearing?
Yes,
Public hearing.
because we're adopting the codes by reference, there's a specific process that's laid out in the health and safety code. And part of that process, or the government code, sorry,
That
there's
would
other
be-
health and safety provisions
Could
too.
that be one motion with both items or two motions?
Yeah, I think that's fine. One motion is fine, but we want to make sure we're doing both things. Because for whatever reason, in their infinite wisdom, when you adopt a code by reference, you have to have the public hearing at the second reading.
Okay. Well, I would move that we approve with staff's requirements, or actually, we'll just approve item 8B for the first reading and set a date of November 24th for the second reading and public hearing.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded properly for approval of 8B. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Are there any closing comments or concerns that you'd like to make aware? Seeing none, I do have a few things. I want to wish everybody a happy Halloween, safe and happy Halloween, and have fun and enjoy. Don't get any tooth decays or anything like that, but have a good time with that. And we are adjourned at 8:52.